welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 460, and today's date is September 5th, 2014, and the title of this episode is U.S. warns ISIS could get a hold of Syria's hidden chemical weapons. Now, let's go back to 2013 of August. Now, we saw during that period the United States was accusing Syria of crossing the red line. He used chemical weapons on his own people. And of course, we've come to find out that it was the rebels, the paid mercenaries, the ones the United States central bankers were backing, and Assad had nothing really to do with this. But Russia stepped in, brokered a deal for Assad to remove all his chemical weapons, and they started the process. Now, as we went throughout the year of 2013 and we came into November, December, all of a sudden reports were coming out from CNN, government officials, that Assad was hiding chemical weapons in the Alawite section of Syria, in caves where the OSCE, UN, they didn't know about it. They had no idea that he was hiding chemical weapons, and they kept this story going for a little while. And then we went through 2014 where they had the Geneva II talks, and basically on their agenda there, where they had the opposition, which is the paid mercenaries, the Free Syrian Army, where the United States central bankers, pay for this army to overthrow Assad. They were sitting with representatives from Assad, and the only thing that they would even talk about was Assad stepping down, which of course didn't happen. As we went throughout the year, we moved into July, and we had elections for Assad, and people from all around the world turned out to vote. In the Middle East, turned out to vote, and they voted Assad back in. He had a very, very big turnout. During this period and during this time, we had the United States shipping military assets into secret bases in Jordan where they were training thousands upon thousands of paid mercenaries. Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, whatever you like to call them, they were being trained on how to use anti-aircraft and anti-tank weapons. Then, as Assad won the elections, all of a sudden, in late July, the Islamic State slithered their way into Iraq, and all of a sudden, we have the Islamic State. They've tried, and when I say they, the U.S. government central bankers have tried to remove Assad for about 3.5 years. It didn't work. The Free Syrian Army just couldn't do it. Assad was winning the battle there. So they had to change their plans, try a different tactic, and this is where we have the Islamic State. Now, during this same time, tribes in Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Yemen were all rising up, and of course in Iraq, when they saw Islamic State, they saw this was a fantastic opportunity to join in on the fight. Now, the tribes there are saying they're separate and apart from the Islamic State, and this is why the United States started bombing, because the tribes were gaining ground inside Iraq, just like they were in Lebanon, just like they were in Libya, just like they are in Yemen. And this is why wherever they're bombing seems to be the opposite of where they're telling us they're going. They said they were bringing humanitarian aid to the Yazidis on the mountain, and they got there. There were no Yazidis. A lot of them lived there in the first place. And they went 100 miles away to Arbil to bomb there. And this is the oil hub area, and this is where the tribes were really pushing to take over that area. And we can see this happening time and time again, and we see right now that bombing is continuing and has not stopped in Iraq. But back to Syria now, we see they're using the propaganda and building up the story that Syria still has chemical weapons, and you can see they're continually building this up because they really want to get into Syria, and they're trying to figure out a way to get in there. Somehow, some way, they need to get in there. We have to remember that Syria is a sovereign nation. Russia has continuously warned the United States, do not go into Syria and bomb Syria. Syria is out there saying the same exact thing, that if you'd like us to work with you to stop the terrorism, we would be happy to do so. And right now, the United States, UK, other countries don't want to work with Assad because they don't believe that he's the elected leader. They believe he's the terrorist, and of course their agenda is to remove Assad. And once they get into Syria, we know that Iran and Syria do have an agreement that if Syria gets attacked, Iran will come to Syria's aid, and this would work out perfectly because then all of a sudden the United States central bankers would have the ability to go into Iran. And this is why the P5+1 talks are pretty much going absolutely nowhere. Now, we do understand there is a ceasefire in Ukraine right now. And it seems like both sides have agreed, and this is a fantastic thing. Hopefully it sticks, and there is peace, and pretty much we have no more fighting, especially for those people who are living there, that there's no more fighting. But we'll have to see how this goes. Let's get into the economic collapse news and talk about what's been going on here. Now, we see that the job numbers have come out today, and they're really not that great. I mean, we look at this, and jobs have tumbled to about 142,000. They were expecting it to be around 212,000, and it's way, way below. And of course, the unemployment figures have dropped from 6.2 to 6.1%, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And again, this metric of, understanding who's employed and who's not employed is completely worthless at this time. Now we can see that the quality of jobs is actually deteriorating. It's not getting better. Of the 142,000 jobs created, just under half came from the lowest paying jobs possible: education, health, leisure, hospitality, and temp help. So we're not seeing quality jobs being added to the industry. We're seeing quality jobs being removed from the industry, where people are being laid off from their high-paying jobs, and of course they cannot find these jobs again. But what we are finding out is that about 53 million people are in some type of temp job. Roughly 1 in 3 U.S. workers is now a freelancer. So that means 53 million Americans, or 34% of the nation's workforce, qualify as freelancers, according to a new report from the Freelancers Union, a nonprofit organization. So we can see right now many of these freelancers are independent contractors, temps, moonlighters, among others, because they cannot find jobs. So they're going on to different sites like Elance and other sites, just trying to get any type of job possible. And basically these are temp positions because they don't pay every single day. So right now, this job recovery is non-existent. Now we also see that in the tech industry, so far this year, about 80,000 jobs were cut. People were completely laid off. That is a 41% jump from last year. Of them, computer makers are responsible for the lion's share. That's about 48,928 job cuts, up 87% from last year. And electronic firms, including Cisco, have decided to boot about 16,406 people so far this year. That's up about 170%. At this rate, the tech sector could experience its worst layoff since the panic year of 2009, when tech companies announced 174,000 job cuts during that year. Now we see we're heading down that same path, and like I said, a lot of companies are putting in and filing that they're going to be laying off more people as we move into this fall and winter, and this is going to continue. We see things are ramping up all over the place around the world. We do see the ceasefire in Ukraine. Hopefully that sticks. But the Middle East, the focus right now is how they're going to create this event to cover up this collapse. And we can see they are definitely pushing the agenda. Now, with healthcare, we see Obamacare's website, Healthcare.gov, was hacked into. The website was hacked in July, and nobody learned about it until 2 months later. So these are the people, the government officials, who would like to take all our personal information and keep it safe and give us health insurance, but they can't even maintain the security of the website. Actually, the website doesn't even work. They're still working on the back end. So you can see right now, they cannot manage this system. If they can't manage this, do you really think they're going to be able to manage the healthcare system? No, because this is not what it was designed for. This was designed to get everybody into Obamacare, to bring in revenue to the government, to bring in revenue to the insurance companies, and this is really not based on giving everyone really great health insurance to help people out. Actually, a lot of the policies are actually terrible. A lot of people are complaining right now that premiums are continually rising. They didn't get the people in from the younger people. They thought they were going to get the youth of America into Obamacare, which would help offset the older people buying the policies, but that didn't happen either because the young people coming out of college, about 80% of them, can't even find the full-time job that they went to college for. So they're working at part-time jobs, living with their parents, and the last things on their mind is getting health insurance. Okay, now out in Malaysia, the Malaysian minister is saying that he would like his team to come back and visit Kiev. And I would say this is the perfect time to do this. Since they have a ceasefire, I see there's no problem for the Malaysian task force to come back in, really inspect the site, see what happened in this area, and investigate who actually shot down the plane. And this is a perfect opportunity, and we'll have to see how that goes, because I'm sure the Kiev government still does not want it to come out that they were responsible for the downing of the plane. And of course, as we know, the voice recorder, the actual evidence has not been released. They're still holding it back. They said they're going to release this information, a preliminary report, but we haven't seen anything just yet. And of course, Ukraine, United States, Australia, Netherlands all got together and said, listen, we can keep this information confidential unless one country would like to go out and produce the information, but if anyone vetoes the information, it has to stay confidential. So you can see they set this whole thing up where information will never get out to the public. Now, in Afghanistan, we understand that Obama has promised that he's going to bring the troops home from Afghanistan, but that's not what's really happening there. Karzai wouldn't sign the bilateral security agreement, so they have to remove the troops. We had Kerry out there trying to help out with the elections, actually manipulate them so they can get the person in there to sign the bilateral security agreement so they can have the troops remain in Afghanistan. But right now, the electoral officials say the UN-supervised vote auditing in the country's presidential elections has been finished, with results to be announced in the coming days. So we'll have to see what happens. If they were able to get their man voted in, you will all of a sudden see the bilateral security agreement signed, and you will see troops being stationed in Afghanistan, and you'll see more being shipped into this area, and there will be no troop withdrawal whatsoever in Afghanistan. Now, as we know, it seems that the ceasefire agreement has been signed by both sides, the southeastern section and the Kiev government. Poroshenko is out there telling Ukraine Foreign Ministry to monitor the ceasefire jointly with the OSCE. And again, it looks like that meeting that Poroshenko had with Putin was a meeting where Putin most likely said, listen, your country's falling apart. You're getting further and further into debt. You have no gas supplies whatsoever. You're losing the battle. Listen, if you have some type of ceasefire and we can agree upon this, we can help out the country, and we can help out, Ukraine. You can help out Russia, and we can, get rid of the killing and all of this. And it seems like this is where it's going. But we have to see what the bankers are going to do. Yatsenyuk is a central banker. He was placed in there by the U.S. government central bankers. And we're going to have to see if any type of an event occurs where the war gets started again. Now, they could be using this time to regroup, get NATO military assets and supplies into this area. I really, truly hope that this is not what's happening. I truly hope that this is peace. There is a ceasefire, and the people don't have to worry anymore about shells hitting their homes and things like that. But the Ukrainian government on Friday will consider Prime Minister Yatsenyuk's border plan. We will approve the wall project. The border with Russia is 2,295 kilometers long. It is necessary to immediately close the border. The plan calls for immediately starting an engineering work to dig 4-meter wide and 2-meter deep ditch and equip it with electronic systems. So it seems like they're going forward with this, even though there's a ceasefire, there's a peace deal, and this gives me some type of indicator that something might be planned here, and we might see something coming up. Now, since the ceasefire has been signed, the European Union is looking at the situation, and they're saying that since there is a de-escalation in Ukraine, they might not impose more sanctions on Russia. Actually, they might remove the sanctions on Russia if this continues and the whole situation de-escalates. The West, I hear rumblings that the West might do the same if this continues. But again, we'll have to see. This is a lot of words coming out, a lot of lip service. We'll have to see the actions of the West, of Europe, and actually what the Kiev government does, because their instructions are from the bankers to continually push, get the southeast region, get Crimea, and I see NATO all over this area right now, and we can see that they're bringing in more military assets, bringing in non-lethal and lethal military assets, pumping in millions of dollars. So we're going to have to see. Now, NATO will rotate its forces deployed in Eastern Europe. NATO will expand its command and logistics infrastructure in Eastern Europe to create conditions for quick deployment of its sea-based ground and air forces. UK is going to commit about 3,500 troops to NATO forces. British Prime Minister David Cameron has said the UK is prepared to contribute about 3,500 troops amid the crises in Ukraine, and of course also because of the advances of the Islamic State. So we have two different things going on here, and everyone is getting ramped up because they understand it doesn't really matter. They've demonized Russia enough in the Ukraine situation, and we can see that we had the situation in Ukraine, we have the situation in the Middle East, and the players are pretty much the same. It's Russia, North Korea, Iran, Syria, China, and the other BRIC nations. And they've demonized Russia quite a bit, and a lot of people think that, oh, Russia's bad, Russia's this. But if you look, this is the second time Putin has brokered a peace deal, one with Syria and now in Ukraine. Two different areas where our leaders here in the United States and Europe, they never talked about peace. They never talked about dialogue. They just had ultimatums. Stop doing it. Let us take over the southeastern section. You better stop your aggressive nature. Stop, stop, stop. That's all we ever heard. We never heard dialogue. Let's sit down. Let's have a ceasefire. Let's talk about what's going on. Absolutely nothing whatsoever. Now, there are reports coming out of Iraq right now, and this is coming from a reporter in Newsweek, where they're saying that they're in northern Iraq on Monday, and they're noting that there's multiple armored Toyotas sweeping down the mountain and passing within a few feet of the reporter's position, and the Toyotas were packed with what appeared to be bearded Western Special Operation Forces. And the reporter said, I watched the trucks pass and saw for myself the crews inside them. They did not wear any identifying insignia, but they were visibly Western and appeared to match all the visual characteristics of American Special Operations soldiers. Now, he is saying that they are actually fighting in Iraq, and again, we have to understand that the United States central bankers do use paid mercenaries in Iraq, so the government could be out there saying, no, there are no fighting U.S. soldiers in Iraq, but they could be paying paid mercenaries in Iraq to fight, and this is why they might be using unmarked uniforms, or they could be U.S. soldiers fighting in this area, and they were told, drive around in the Toyotas, keep a low profile, and again, as we notice, there is more and more troops coming into Iraq. There is mission creep, and we know they're getting set up and prepared for the big invasion that they're going to have after the event. Now, Senator Lieberman is out there. He is saying that President Obama does not need authorization from Congress to attack the Islamic State in Syria. Well, he kind of does, because he'd be breaking international law. And secondly, Syria has never attacked the United States. So what would be the reason to go in there? Because there's a terrorist group? Well, there's terrorist groups in many places. That doesn't mean you can just go into someone's country and attack them. And Lieberman said that that Obama should use his executive powers as commander-in-chief to stop the terrorist organization from gaining more murderous momentum in the Middle East. And of course, this is all lip service to make everyone believe that the president can just go ahead and go into a sovereign nation and attack them. Well, if he does that, that is an act of war. That's what that really means. Now, there are other reports out there saying that EU countries are actually buying the black market oil from ISIS. Now, we understand that the Islamic State captured many different oil wells in Syria. They're smuggling down into Iraq, into the Kurdish region, and then, boom, they're pushed out into different areas and they're being sold on the black market. Now, if you notice, the United States central bankers have not said anything about this whatsoever. They're not doing anything about this. They're not freezing anything. They're not placing sanctions on it. Absolutely nothing. Why? Because they're controlling the Islamic State, they're using the US dollar, and they're taking oil from Syria and selling it to other places. So this is just fine for them, because you have to remember, in Libya, when the true people of Libya took over the ports and oil fields and they loaded up a tanker with oil because they wanted to go out and sell it, the SEAL team was on that ship in like 2 seconds flat, where they brought that ship back because they will not allow the oil to be sold not using the US dollar. So we see the Islamic State selling the oil, but it's a different type of thing here. Do you really think the Islamic State would only sell it for the dollar unless instructed? No, they would sell it for gold, they would sell it for the euro, they would sell it for anything. But we can see they're sticking to the dollar, and that is evidence right there that this is a lot of propaganda right now. They are controlled by the United States, by Israel, by the UK, and other Arab nations, and they're doing exactly what they want. And what this goes on to say, and this is coming from a Turkish news agency, what happens is the oil is smuggled down from Syria, brought into the Kurdish region of Iraq, and then by truck they go through Turkey into Europe, and the oil is sold to Europe. And seems like everyone who's with the private Western central bank system is absolutely fine with this. Now, it seems the U.S. government, the government officials, and the corporate media is continually pushing terror, 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 letting us know that the Islamic State is already in the country. They're coming over the border, because our borders are wide open. UK keeps saying that, yes, we're on a severe alert right now. We're getting reports and chatter of terror coming into the UK, and other European nations are saying the same exact thing. And what we're seeing right now is they're still demonizing Edward Snowden. They're saying all the information that he leaked is helping the Islamic State avoid U.S. detection. Well, this is absolutely ridiculous. What they're saying is the Islamic State is able to evade U.S. intelligence and is harder to catch because the terrorist group has clearly capitalized on the huge leaks by former National Security Agency contractor Edward Snowden. They're saying that the Islamic State relies heavily on the Internet for its internal communications. Let me just say, if there's any type of terror organization or any type of agency or anything that's out there who wants to avoid being detected and hearing their communications used, they would not use the Internet whatsoever. Even a person on the street knows that. So Edward Snowden pretty much has nothing to do with this whatsoever. I mean, once like Russia and Germany found out they were being spied on, what did they do? They said, oh, we're going to go back to typewriters, we're going to do handwritten notes. The same thing would happen with the terrorists. They would not use open communications like the Internet, which is open to everything, where you can go and tap in. They wouldn't use cell phones to talk to each other because anybody can hear what they're saying. So all this is absolutely ridiculous. The only way the NSA has the ability to spy on people is because they made deals with other companies like Microsoft, Google, Yahoo, and many others to have backdoors to get into the systems. Otherwise, they have a very difficult time breaking real encryption. And I'm not talking about the encryption where they created it or have deals with the encryption companies where they know the keys and the method. I'm talking about real encryption that they know nothing about it. They can't break into that. So what we're seeing is pure propaganda, and they're continually pushing this out there that Edward Snowden is the problem. No, the U.S. government, the people who are lying to us, the NSA, the DHS, everyone that is spying on the American people, feeding us this propaganda to cover the central bankers, they're the problem. Now, it looks like coming out of Kiev, it seems like there is an unnamed source in the Kiev government who says that he thinks that the junta is going to use a chemical attack in East Ukraine and blame it on Russia. Now, we're going to have to see if this happens. What he said was the junta's intent is to use chemical weapons against the people of Donbass. And they're saying that they might blame this on Russia to say, look what Russia just did, and create a false flag environment. Now, again, we do have 4 NATO ships in the Black Sea. We do have the ceasefire talks going on right now. It would be very, very easy to have something blow up, have some type of chemical attack, or just anything where the U.S. government, the corporate media, the Kiev government can say, you see, Putin didn't want a ceasefire. He didn't want peace. Why, our guard was down. Look what he did. He attacked us with chemical weapons. He blew up a NATO ship. I mean, they can use pretty much anything at this point. And of course, they'll have no proof whatsoever. It will be played all over the corporate media, and this will be front page, Russia, chemical attack, and this is something that we really have to watch. And I just keep bringing these things out there, so if one of these things does actually happen, we can say, we know this was a setup. We understand what is going on here. Now, the U.S. is warning that ISIS could get a hold of Syria's chemical weapons. Now, this was reported back in December of 2013 by CNN and other government officials. I reported on it saying this is complete propaganda. They're going to use this because their goal is always the same, to get into Syria. And here we are. What they're actually saying is the U.S. is concerned that Syria still has chemical weapons and that any stockpiles left behind could end up in the hands of ISIS. We can only imagine what a group like that would do if ISIS actually has the chemical weapons in possession. And this is coming from Samantha Powers. And Powers stressed that the immediate concern is that President Assad's regime still possesses these chemical weapons, that we haven't gotten all of them, and we can see they're still on this line of thought that Assad is using these chemical weapons on his own people, and they're still going down this path. So what does this mean? Well, I've said this in the past. This coming event most likely will be a multi-pronged type of an event. They really have to make it spectacular because they have to prove and make the American people believe that the Islamic State is very, very dangerous and we need to go into Syria. Now, if they make the case that a city was hit with a chemical weapon, they can say, see, Assad is part of this. He supplied the Islamic State with chemical weapons. They used it here in the United States, and now we definitely have to go into Syria. So you can see how they're trying to maneuver their way, trying to make people think that Syria is part of it. They're looking at the poll numbers, and then who knows if these poll numbers are true. They're saying that most of the American people would like to go into Syria at this point. They might be using this to convince everyone, even though the poll numbers aren't true. But once they say that these are the poll numbers, they can convince everyone that, yes, look, everyone else is on board. Why doesn't everyone join us? We can attack Syria. And we can see that they're maneuvering to do this. Their goal has always been the same. It has not changed whatsoever. They're also coming out with reports that the Islamic State could be smuggling nuclear and radioactive materials from Iraq and Syria. ISIL now controls about half of Iraq, potentially giving it access to some low-level radioactive and radiological materials. And we've heard this before, but they're bringing the story up again. The State Department is out there saying that this type of threat is absolutely critical because they could be making a dirty bomb. They could be using it anywhere. Now, a former CIA chief says that the Islamic State is capable of some type of terror attack on America tomorrow. They have the ability. Now, if this is the case and the Islamic State does attack the United States, all this intelligence, NSA, domestic homeland security, everything that they have running absolutely doesn't work. The pat-downs in the airports, all of it is a waste of time. Because what we're seeing right now is none of this helps if we actually get attacked. That's the first thing. So all the rights being taken away from each one of you, completely waste of time. All the security, waste of time. Because in reality, who are the real terrorists? The real terrorists are the central bankers. They're the ones who are using paid mercenaries, who are trying to convince the American people that they need to go to war, and the only way to do this is with some type of terror attack, and of course blame it on someone else. All of it is to scare you into something they couldn't do otherwise, and that is to convince the people to go into war. And this is why they create these false flag events. Now, I've been saying this for quite a while, and it seems like we're really moving forward to a point where they will be doing something very, very big. Now, I've talked about cyber attacks, which I do believe they will be creating some type of an attack on the power grid. They've already given us information that the Islamic State they do have the ability to take out the power grid. We saw a dry run on the power grid. We also have reports that Russia has been hitting the financial institutions and the power grid via cyber attacks. They also say China is cyber attacking, and now North Korea. So we can see that all of this is all coming together. Now they're telling us there's 12 airliners missing from Libya. And that could be used as some type of terror attack inside the United States. Now, if you notice, all of this revolves around all those countries that they have lost control of, where the people of those countries have risen up, taken back their country, and now they're saying that terror is coming out from each one of these. They're also saying that, and this is coming from the CIA director, that the Al-Qaeda group in Yemen could bring down an airliner tomorrow in the United States. They do have the capability. It's amazing that they're really pointing out that Libya has missing airplanes. Yemen can bring an airliner over here and attack the United States. And these are all the places where they lost control. And now, of course, yesterday I reported on that they're saying that the Islamic State is infiltrating into moving into these countries, and they're saying that the tribes are now joining up with the Islamic State and they're part of it. No, they're not part of it. If you notice, a real revolution or an overthrow of a government, the people don't broadcast it out there because they're too busy removing the government. They're too busy fighting and saying, you know what, we want to take back our country. We want the puppet government out there. They don't create videos. They don't execute people. Look at the American Revolution. Can you imagine the people fighting in the revolution putting out all the propaganda of what they're doing and broadcasting it in all these newspapers? No, they did it in secret. They didn't want the British to know what they were doing. They kept everything under wraps. They didn't create videos and kill people to prove their point. That's not how it works. The only reason this is being pushed out there is to convince you that the Islamic State is a dangerous terrorist group because Al-Qaeda lost the fear factor, and now they needed a new group, and this is why they're pushing this so hard. I mean, think about what the corporate media is doing right now. They're pushing this very, very hard, and any time they push something so hard, you know this is propaganda from the U.S. government, from UK, from Israel, from the other European nations, and they continually push this as hard as they possibly can because they need to convince you of the propaganda. This is why when the downing of the MH17 first came out, right split second after it happened, it was blamed on Russia, and the corporate media kept it going as hard as they possibly could. Why? Because it was complete propaganda. They had no proof. They had nothing, but they just kept on replaying it to convince you, convince you, convince you. That's all they did. And now what they're doing, if you look at the corporate media, they're continually playing up the Islamic State, how they're coming into this country, how they're going to rain terror on this country. Yes, something will happen, but it's not coming from the Islamic State. Of course, they're going to make it look like it's coming from there, but this was planned way, way in advance. The system is coming apart. The economy is collapsing. They know it. They want all eyes off of them and onto another group or country, and this is why they're doing it right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.